Hey, so we've got the new NHK 5 on the right-hand side in the shop for some testing. These will be available on the website later on. On the left-hand side is the 4 Plus, and we've compared the 4 Plus against some other LED projectors. Check on the Lightwerkz channel if you're interested in learning a little bit more about these NHK projectors and how they compare to something like the Morimoto MLED, as we won't really be discussing that in this video. But a lot of the attributes and the qualities that are found on the 4 Plus are going to be similar on the 5. Now, the thing with the 4 Plus, the plus essentially stands for the additional high beam. Now, you can even see by the thickness of the wires in the back here, much thicker wires for the solenoid, for the additional high beam support, and thinner wires because on the 5, it just controls the shield. The solenoid pulls down the shield, lets all the light out like you normally have on a HID or LED projector. The 4 Plus is unique, and we've found it very, very nice because it has additional high beam support using a dual reflector and dual chipset design. And that's what makes the 4 Plus really stand out. If you're looking for a projector that has amazing high beams, I think that the 4 Plus is really where you want to be. Now, if you have a separate low and high beam reflector where you already have a separate high beam, I think the NHK 5 is going to be a clear winner here. However, you might have a dual filament setup and you need a solid low beam and a solid high beam. I think the 4 Plus is really your best bet. You know, in terms of the overall size and fitment, you can see it's based off of the same thing. One is black, one is silver. Pretty much all the same attributes except for that high beam and the chipset design and the reflectors, of course. So we'll show you how these two compare. Again, check out the other videos on the 4 Plus if you want to learn a little bit more about how they compare against other projectors. But these two are very similar, and we'll show you exactly what makes the NHK 5 better in some ways. All right, we've fired up both projectors instant on because they're LED. Up above, we've got the new 5, and down below, it's the 4 Plus. If you watch some of the 4 Plus videos and seen our output shots and see what people are doing with them, you can see that distinct yellowish color right under the purple and the blue cutoff. That is something that is categorized by this unit specifically, coming up really close so you could see it. And that is not something that we see on the 5, which is really nice. It's almost as if they've taken what they've learned on the 4 Plus and really fine-tuned and optimized it. The hotspot and intensity zone is much fuller on the 5. And if you really kind of hone in, let me see if I can lower the exposure a little bit. The hotspot zone is much larger than the 4 Plus. So 4 Plus is really, really bright. But if you take a look, the intensity zone is still tight, it's still wide, but it's a larger zone. So I think it's really, really well optimized, especially for, down the road use and good distance. All right, we've got the 4 Plus on the lux meter right now, hitting about 687. I mean, it's pretty much hitting 700 lux. Really solid, and that's right next to the step up, which is right where it should be. You don't want the hotspot, zone down below super low. So we're going to raise up the projector for you a little bit slowly and just sort of see where it ends up. And you can see we're, as far as where the light should be, it's definitely right under the cutoff, and then it slowly fades away as we get out of the hotspot zone. But that yellowish color is definitely, fully visible. And you can see there's a little bit more purple. So you can probably tune this, but if you noticed, the 5 was just a little bit sharper and a little crispier. All right, so, I mean, this is the 5. We're at 800 lux. I saw it hit about 820. That's a very small percentage of increase. So I don't want to say low beam intensity is brighter on the 5, but it technically is. And overall, that intensity zone, like I said, has been optimized, and it's much larger. Now you can see the cutoff line is much sharper here. You could, again, maybe you could tune the 4 Plus. Maybe this is a really good version of the 5. We literally took it out of the box and fired it up. But this one just seems a little bit crispier and a little bit fine-tuned. Now, as we go up, you'll see the same thing. Fades away a little bit, but it still stays strong. So it stays stronger as you're moving up. And even in the video, you can see, I'm gonna lower the exposure a little bit. You can see that the intensity zone is really solid, and it's not just directly under the cutoff like the 4 pluses. This is a little bit larger of an area. So overall, they've really optimized the low beam distribution, and that's why I said earlier, I think that this unit is better if you want to prioritize low beam versus high beam. And if you really want to prioritize high beam use, let's say you use high beams for an extended period of time, the 4 Plus is just an amazing unit itself. So we'll compare the high beams next. All right, since we had the 5 lit up, we literally just hooked up the high beam, which just drops the shield. No additional light is provided. However, additional light is sort of distributed above the cutoff, and we are hitting about 891. So let's say a solid, 100 lux over the low beam. So there is additional light output, and it is a good amount. We've seen sometimes the intensity doesn't change at all when you have a bi-LED projector going to high beam mode, because they put the hotspot almost way too low and there's no focus on high beam. This high beam is actually set up in a pretty good zone, and overall that's a solid high beam. It technically functions and it's totally usable. All right, we've got the 4 Plus in high beam mode. Not only does the solid light drop, there is also additional LEDs on a lower reflector. So this is a dual reflector, dual chipset design. That's what makes the 4 Plus unique. And you can see it's a really, really concentrated hotspot for high beam use. That's going to translate into great distance down the road. High beam use is going to be exceptional. And you can see with the 5, we were hitting about, I believe, 900 lux. And right now I've seen in the mid 1100s. Didn't quite reach 1200, but if we move it around, it will come up a little bit higher, and we saw some really high numbers. So that's fantastic for a bi-LED projector. And it's really up to you to make a decision on what you feel is going to be the best unit for your, for your job and for the application, of course, because size and installation, wiring is all pretty much the same between these two projectors. It's just going to come down to individual preferences, because you're not going to be able to tell which projector is being used until you fire them up. So let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. And can't wait to hear from you.